Hey, this is Sean with the Go Tennis Podcast, powered by Signature Tennis. Check out our calendar of Metro Atlanta tennis events at letsgotennis.com. And if you're a fan of Bull Shark Sports, go to shop.letsgotennis.com. Get yourself a hoodie or a hat. Today, this is Youth Sports Talk with Coach Ben Hestley. Today, Coach Ben wants to ask the question, is punishment for mistakes really a bad thing? Ben, you ready to talk youth sports?
Yeah, I'm interested to see where this one goes. So let's do it.
All right, today Coach Ben wants to talk about punishment versus praise. And is there ever a place for punishment? Ben, where do you want to start?
I think first, just creating some context. We're talking about punishments in practice. So think your team practices or group. If you're playing an individual sport, it might be a group setting, group session, or group practice. Not necessarily like the crazy dad who makes the kid run home for losing a tennis match. Like we're not talking about that sort of thing. We're talking about what some people might even call consequences, right? Hey, you miss a shot, you gotta do push-ups. Or you miss baseball example, you miss a ground ball, you got to go run the pole, which means you just got to go run, touch the pole, and come back. That sort of thing.
All right, so in that case, what psychology would call that is a positive punishment. So I'm not just saying, hey, you got to go do push ups till you puke. We're not talking about hazing. We're not talking about anything that's dangerous for the kid. We're talking about positive punishment, which means it's good for you, like push ups or burpees or whatever we're going to have you do. But it's also going to let you know that you're doing that in response to some mistake or something you're not supposed to do. Ben, I'll give you an example. I ran an academy at one point and we had push up rules. So I'd never made a kid do a push up. All they had to do was follow the rules. So we had certain rules that you'd follow. If you missed a drop shot short in the net, you had to do 5 push ups. Double fault, 5 push ups. Missed a lob long, 5 push ups. So there were certain things, just quick little 5 push ups and get back up to what you were doing. They were more reminders than they were really, all right, you lost your match, now go run 5 miles. Is that kind of the difference where we're hanging out here?
Yeah, and I think as I had a coach that did the similar thing. Her thing was star jumps, right, where you kind of get down like you're going to squat, but then you push off and you do your hands and feet out like this and make a star. And that was the thing. She also like tuck jumps, which she called kangaroo hops, where you jump up in the air and pull your knees to your chest. Those were her 2 favorite exercises. And so that would be a thing, right? If you same kind of thing. Hit a ball in the net. It would be something more like process driven, right? Like the first ops will get the ball over the net. So you get the ball on the net, you got a 5-star jumps or 5 tuck jumps or whatever. So she would do a similar thing. It will usually be right. Not usually, it would always be right there by the court. It wouldn't. You're not sending the kid off to do something that they're not going to be supervised. Like, hey, go run to the boat launch and back, right? Where you're not, no one's around, you're
Right.
running a mile in the neighborhood. Like that can be unsafe. We're not talking about that, but it is an interesting concept because it's something that in my coaching journey, I mean, I remember doing that stuff as an athlete, both in tennis and baseball, basketball. We ran
Mm-hmm.
suicides all the time, right? Miss a
The wall
layup.
jumps in basketball. Oh,
Yeah, miss a layup. You got to run a suicide and
yeah.
whatever. And so, but that was the norm when we were growing up. And then I get to become a coach, and I'm in my 20s and 30s, and I'm learning about coaching and all this stuff now. Then was about that. That's wrong. That's bad. That's just it's negative. It creates anxiety in kids and stress. It makes them not want to play the sport. It hurts their esteem. And one of the things was like about how I remember that the big one was about you're doing all these like we want exercise to be healthy and enjoyable, right? Like working out should be something that we do as humans to be more to be healthier. And if you're making kids do push-ups because they made a mistake, then you're telling them that exercise is bad and they'll have a negative connotation towards exercise, which is just sort of to me like a total other extreme, right? Like here we have one coach who's making you run till you puke
Mm-hmm.
for missing a layup, And then on the other end, there's zero consequence at all for any mistake because we don't want to look like a bad coach. So where do we where do we meet in the middle, right?
Yeah, and you're right. We grew up and there was less oversight in protecting the children. And I get that. So if I do my Google search again, which I like to do with you, the strict response from the Googles is no, punishment is not good for athletes. And I think you and I would disagree with that blanket statement of just saying you're saying never. The
You
Googles are
can
saying
never
never.
say never. I mean,
Never
I
say never.
always say, never say never, never say always, because there's
Yeah. And in this case, it's a lot of the this is bad, and I think it's mainly trying to make sure if you can't do it with moderation, if you can't understand what it's being used for, then it can be abused. And it's kind of the last statement. But they're talking about positive reinforcement as well. And that's going to be a different scenario. So we've got positive punishment versus positive reinforcement, and then negative punishment and negative reinforcement. So in this case, if I've got a positive reinforcement, that means you hit a good shot, I give you a candy, right? I'm giving you something positive for the good shot. And that's hard to do in sport other than just
I don't
praise.
believe in that. I don't. I mean, you should hit a good shot
Just,
because it's the way you're supposed to do that to play the game.
I agree. I'm
That's
just
where the
defining.
participation. That's where we went down the rabbit hole with the participation trophy.
I agree. But in that case, in that case, it's going to the extreme, right? I'm
Yeah,
just defining the different ways we can positively reinforce them. Here's your treat for doing a good job, or negatively reinforce them, which is taking something away from them, meaning not letting them play anymore, making them sit out. That's different from a punishment, which is an activity. A negative punishment is making them go rub their face in the dirt, which is actually not good for anybody and is just a bad thing. A positive punishment meaning here's something that's good for you. It's going to make you a better athlete, but it's kind of uncomfortable and you don't really like doing it. So we've got lots of ways as
yeah,
coaches that we can consider to encourage or discourage behavior. I think you and I are talking about there's a way to manage all of them other than the negative punishment. I just think that's a bad idea, right?
yeah. I think, and for me, I would boil it down to one question: Is it constructive or is it abusive? Plain and simple.
That's a good line to draw. Sure.
I mean, there's gonna be tons of methods, right? Um, and we got to use whatever methods we can to try to motivate these kids and help them improve. Like I would never make a kid sit out for, and we're talking about in practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would never say, "Oh, Sean, you missed a ball, go sit down." Like you probably need to hit more balls, right?
Right.
Because you missed one. But I make kids sit out for behavioral reasons, right? Like you can
Sure.
make kids. I mean, back in the day, we would run laps, do push-ups, sit-ups, if some sort of physical punishment if the kid was not behaving appropriately, right? They were acting out. But there's nothing worse to a kid than me sitting on the bench.
And we used to have games that way where,
Yeah,
all
and
right, as soon as you miss, you go sit down, you're out.
yeah, and that's why I don't like that. I don't personally don't like elimination games,
Right.
right? Where you
That's a
have
good
to,
way to put it.
and I
Elimination game.
think
Right.
the divide gets greater, right? Because who's going to end up playing? Well, around the world was one.
Yep.
Well, it's always the best players, the two best players in the group that get to hit the most balls.
Right.
So we're not really doing that because that's not constructive. It's not abusive. It's not constructive.
That's why I like jail. You go to the other end, you can get yourself, you
You're
can earn
still
your way
at
back
least you're
in.
still playing. At least in jail, at least you're
Right.
still on the court. You're
Even
still
though there's a line. Sorry about
yeah,
that.
you're still a part of the thing. I know. Yeah, I don't like lines. I mean, sometimes
Uh,
well, we don't want to get down a rabbit hole. Okay, so we
we've
won't.
already done that.
Let's keep it about is this bad? Is as a coach on the baseball field making your kid run poles for missing the grounder a bad thing? And I think it depends, right? I mean, again, if it's constructive, it's fine. We need as coaches, I do think the coaches need to be given some liberty nowadays to coach the kids a little hard,
Yeah.
right? They need it. They need to toughen up a little bit. They need some things that they have to work through. We talk about this in prior shows, but also the thing about consequences that I'm thinking about is, and it's a consequence, or you call it a punishment, it creates some sort of pressure, right?
Hmm.
Like if I know if I miss this grounder, or like one I'll often do is a team game. So we're playing a serve game, and I'll say, hey, the losing team has to do an exercise, and the winning team gets to pick what that exercise is. Now, me, I get to choose how many of them.
Hmm.
You can't go like I'll have kids go 100 push-ups. Like, no, that's too much. Like you pick, you guys have to do the exercise because you lost. You guys, because you won, you get to pick the exercise, but I get to choose what the reps are, how many there are. Okay, so we have a good constructive environment that way. Because in the real, what we're practicing for is eventually the competition, and the competition has pressure, right? It has natural consequences built in. So why wouldn't we try to practice that with our kids in a safe environment with a coach to help them prepare for the stressors that come in the real competition?
Yeah, I've got two things that come to mind in my own personal childhood, which was the layups in basketball. And yes, I was the kid that could do layups on both sides because I was at home with a basketball, and that's what I did. But if I missed one, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing, and that was one of the consequences. Now, if I missed it in a game, it was embarrassing, and everybody was watching, and we don't get the points, and we might lose. So there is that pressure there. Are we trying to recreate a little bit of the pressure in saying 5 push-ups if you miss your layup? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who it is. Like we're not talking about a 6-year-old beginner YMCA type class. I
No,
don't.
but it's fun to make them do 1 push-up.
Yeah, like
I
because
love doing that. I'm like, you know
they
what?
can't.
If you miss 2 serves in a row, you do 1 push-up. They're like, I can't even do a push-up. I'm like, that's why. We're gonna
You
do
could,
one.
and you could even like let's use serving for example. You could do it for buy-in purposes as the coach. Again, you're using these methods to move them in the direction of development. So let's say that the kid doesn't care, right? The kid's like, I'm serving, wow, wow, whack it, like they're just being kind of goofy. Hey, okay, look, if you miss 2 serves, you got to do how many a push up, or you
One
got
push-up.
5-star jumps or whatever. And then what we hope happens is they go, okay, and you as the coach go, okay, do you want to start making your serves? And
Yeah.
would you like to listen, learn, and practice
Why don't you try?
the correct way to actually make a serve,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
and that's where sometimes the competition, even in practice as well. If my 5 kids and your 5 kids, we're doing layups, and we're gonna see how many we can do in a row. And there's a competition at the end. You're gonna do as many push-ups or jumping jacks or whatever as the balls you lose by, and they keep track of the score and they try to keep it close. And there's that pressure and those things that we're trying to create without just torturing or abusing children. And that's why I'm a little concerned with the Google response of a flat out no. There's no place for it. And I don't think either of us agree.
yeah, I can't buy that. I'm not buying that. I think that again, coaches use methods to help prepare to help develop kids. And if the method that gets across the motivation to them, the carrot, if you will, is I've got to do some sort of exercise that if I don't do XYZ, then I think it's fine. Now you got to move on from that, right? And hopefully the kids is going to get better and better. And if they, as long as they're getting opportunities to get better, I think it's fun. I think we have to think about that coaching is on this continuum, right? In this case, one end you have no punishment ever for any reason, and on the other end you have run to
Abuse.
oblivion. If you make the slightest mistake, we gotta we gotta bring it more to the middle,
Yeah.
right? Bring
Happy
it more
happy
to the middle. And
medium.
it depends on the age and stage of the player, right? As you
Absolutely.
get older and you're able to have your coping skills improve, hopefully you can be able to take on more of these challenges, embrace these challenges. Again, like we talked before about the mindset, take ownership of that. If this coach is going to do this, hey man, take ownership and responsibility for that situation and do the best you can. And guess what? At the end of the day, you're going to learn some problem solving skills. You're going to learn some coping skills. You're going to build some resilience. And that's only going to help you in the real competition of whatever sport it is that you play.
Or life. So my coaching advice, my last thing would be, because you always got your last thing that you'll say. But in this case, my last thing would be as a coach, overpraise. So we say big praise, little correct, right? As coaching, tell them how great they are. Stop everybody. Oh my gosh, that was the best thing I've ever seen, especially if you've punished them or given them consequences a minute ago. You can see that as the kid and say, all right, who needs this right now? And I think that's a bit of experience within coaching is saying, okay, look around, find out who can't handle a punishment right now. Look at them and go, hey, don't worry about it. Just try again, right? And you can skip those things. But in this case, to be able to big praise and say, hey, great job, and almost make up for the previous one, I think can be a great addition to having consequences for certain things in sport.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm about to say is good or bad. I love your take on it. I'm notorious as a coach for like the double or nothing type guy. So I'll have a kid, if they miss a serve, all right, Clyde, that's gonna be that's
10
five
push-ups,
spots.
you want to
And go,
try
hey,
again?
coach, give me one more, coach. And
Yeah.
coach, I missed this one, I'll do 10. But
Mm-hmm.
if I make it, I don't have to do any. And I'm a sucker for that. I'm like, okay, man, go ahead.
Because in that case, they're also volunteering to do the punishment.
Yes, and they lock in more. It's
Yeah.
on them.
Yeah.
They did it.
Yeah.
They did it. And so that's that's a powerful thing because again, good example, whether you like punishment, don't like punishment. Hey, if the kid puts that responsibility on themselves, that's a good thing.
I like it. Ben, did we answer the question?
I think we did. I think we nailed it.
We
Be
disagree. We couldn't.
responsible, parents and coaches. Make
Exactly.
sure you stay constructive. Okay, nobody should be puking out there or
No,
passing out,
not
but
what we're saying.
it's okay to nudge your kids a little bit and coach them hard.
I like it. Ben, thank you so much. This has been
All right.
Youth Sports Talk with Coach Ben Hesley. Thank you, sir. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.